Welcome to the Property Profits Real Estate Podcast, the show where real estate investors talk strategy, capital, deals, and growth with your host, Dave Dubeau.
Oh, we're in for a big treat today, you guys. We've got Lauren Brychell on the call. Lauren has worked with over 50 different capital raising companies. I believe at last count, she'd helped them raise well over $75 million and counting for their real estate deals. So she's an expert on investor relations, and probably even more important for today's conversation is staying in touch with prospects, like follow-up. We all suck at follow-up. Lauren does not. She's very good at it. So Lauren, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
So Lauren, give us a little overview of how you work with capital raisers and what you do with them to connect them with potential investors.
Sure. Well, there's lots of different ways to work with capital raisers. And I personally like to start at the base. I like to look at it as a house, right? Got to start with the foundation. You have to have somewhere to put your investors, the leads, somewhere to nurture them. So you're actually converting as many as you're bringing in, or as great of a potential that you're bringing in. So the goal is to have the foundation set so you're not wasting marketing dollars. So have somewhere for them to go, have a nurture, have a sequence, and then you can start bringing in the leads from all kinds of different places depending on your timeline, your avatar, your budget.
Right. Okay. So when you start working with a typical syndicator, fund manager, capital raiser, where do they tend to suck the most?
Follow up, for sure. Always follow up.
So do they typically have the foundation kind of there? It's just they're missing the follow up pieces.
They have pieces of the foundation there usually. Usually they'll have a CRM. I don't see too many Excel spreadsheets these days, but they're usually not utilizing them to their fullest potential. Yeah. And usually that's where that nurture piece comes in, because a lot of times they don't have anything automated. They don't know where the leads are. Their notes are all over the place. It's just disorganized.
They don't have people tagged and all that kind of cool stuff.
Right.
All right. So when you're working with a new client, you're helping them get the nurture sequence kind of organized without giving away all your secret sauce. But what do you typically get them doing?
Well, my rule of thumb is if you don't log it, it never happened. So first, we've got to get in the groove of setting notes, making sure investors are tagged, asking the right questions on calls, having a specific sequence in calls. A lot of people make the mistake of pitching too early when you're getting to know an investor and building that relationship. So it's getting them into the groove, into the new process of doing things the right way, and actually writing it down that they've done it so they can go back later and remember that, because,
well, not only that, but that kind of helps cover their butt in case everything, knock on wood, anything should happen with Securities and Exchange. They've got proof that they've touched base with these people X number of times. Okay, very, very smart. So for an actual nurture sequence, do you usually do multiple different sequences depending on where people are in the funnel, or is it kind of get them started with one? And if so, what does that nurture sequence, what do you usually recommend for people for that?
Sure. Usually I like to start with one, because if they don't have anything in place, we don't want to overwhelm them off the bat. Yeah. So we start with one good one. And ideally we're segmenting their lists as well, so we can get into 2 or 3 different sequences going at once later. Yeah. But it's a mix of emails, sometimes text messages, obviously lots of phone calls, depending on who their investor is. And the messaging will depend on who they're trying to target as well. So it's all kind of based on that kind of cadence, though.
Got it. All right. So we're doing this interview in the middle of 2026. You also help your investors, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, generate new prospect leads. What are you finding is working well these days for kind of stirring the pot and getting a bit more interest?
It's a great question. And there's so many different ways. I like to look at, again, timeline, budget, avatar, right? That's going to be the biggest contenders of who you're actually trying to target. So paid media and LinkedIn strategies and things are working in some effect. Cost per lead can be higher on some of those. LinkedIn has been a great resource for accredited investors recently. Very curated events outside the real estate space have been pretty interesting. Kind of finding those blue oceans that people wouldn't expect you to be there offering, investment opportunities, but you're kind of just there in the background. Those have been good. And then lots of local events, meetups, property tours have been really lucrative for my clients in the last year or so. So that's been fun to watch.
Hey there, if you're a capital raiser, a syndicator, or a fund manager, and you're looking for a steady flow of incoming accredited investor leads, then go ahead, grab a free copy of my new book, How to Get 20 Accredited Investor Meetings Every Month Without Cold Calling, Networking, or Chasing People. You can get that at 20accreditedinvestorsbook.com. Again, that's the number 20accreditedinvestorsbook.com.
So when you say events, you're not saying that your clients are putting on events. They're attending other people's events outside of the real estate space. Is that what I understood?
So they're putting on their own kind of happy hours, hosted events, educational sessions, but they're also attending other events, say tax and asset protection events, or they're finding different groups of people that they're interested in bringing in as investors and going where they might be.
Right. So I find some people are naturally gregarious and outgoing and extroverted, others not so much. So when you're working with kind of a more introverted client, do you have any tips for them when they are attending events for kind of breaking the ice, getting that conversation going? Because a lot of them, I remember back in the day doing networking, I sucked at it. Like I was a wallflower. I did not enjoy, shaking hands and pressing the flesh, so to speak. So how do you coach people through that?
Sure. It's funny. Most of the clients that I come across aren't super introverted, but the ones that are, we like to practice a certain set of questions. The scariest thing is, what am I going to say to someone if I go up to them? Right.
Yeah.
So it's okay. What are some great icebreakers, some questions that are open-ended? They're not too salesy. They're not too deep, right? Like what are some that we can practice? And then actually go and practice those with friends, family, trusted people until you get more comfortable with it. That's one approach that I really like to take.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. You were mentioning earlier a couple of things I want to cover before I forget. Number one is avatar. Number two is not going for the check too fast. So first of all, avatar wise, when you start working with a new client, do they typically have a pretty good idea of who their avatar is? Or is that kind of one of those foundational things you really kind of help them dial in?
Yeah, they usually don't have a great idea. They say, accredited investors wanting passive income. Okay, well, that's a million different people.
Anybody with a pulse that could write a check could qualify as a accredited investor. Got it.
Right. So that's the answer I get most of the time, which is okay. And what we do is either we say, okay, who are your investors currently? Let's study your top either favorite or your top largest check writers. And then we're going to go from there. Or if they're like, I don't know, I don't have any investors yet, or it's been friends and family. It's like, okay, well, where can we draw people from? Experiences? Do you have past employment history that can bring in a specific group of people? Or do you have someone that's like you that you want to bring in? And so it's a deep dive that we do a lot of the time just to get really specific on exactly who we're targeting, where they might live, what their family looks like, all kinds of different things.
Right. And then once you figure out the avatar with them, what's usually the next step? Like where do you take them next in the journey?
Next after that is making sure all of their messaging is speaking directly to that avatar. So we're going to go over their website and their pitch deck and their emails and their social media posts and make sure that the problems and the solutions that you're trying to bring to your avatar via these investments are coming out in that material.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Now, you mentioned something at the beginning of the conversation about a challenge some capital raisers have is they're impatient and they try to, it sounds counterintuitive, but they try to raise the money too quickly. So what does that look like? What does that mean in your experience?
Yeah, I can't even tell you how many times I've been at conferences or events or on calls where first call where you're trying to get to know people, see if it's a good fit for both parties. And they're like, all right, well, I've got this deal. It's 20x, return and whatever.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And it's like, whoa, okay. Like, I don't even know if I like you, know you, trust you yet. All the different things you'll hear across the industry. Right. And it just comes off desperate and salesy. And it's like, well, I'm not going to give my money to some guy who, has this deal that's, I don't know anything about it. Right. Yeah. So I see that mistake a lot. Yeah, exactly. And really it breaks the trust and it looks desperate. And I always say you need to start raising capital before you even have a deal, before you even need the capital. Start going out, networking, building those relationships that when you finally do have something to send out to your investor database, you've got warmed up leads in there. So you're not pitching them on the first time you talk with them.
You're preaching to the choir there, Lauren, that's for sure. Yeah, I see that mistake all the time. And I think it's some of that old school sales advice that we are always be closing. The hardcore sales stuff is just such a disservice because you're not selling somebody a washer and dryer for $1,000 or something like that. You're getting somebody to invest $50, $100, $200,000 of their money in a deal with you, right? And it really is about that relationship. So how do you kind of gently get them to get their head around that? Because I know I've worked with a few clients that it's just tough, like getting them to stop doing that.
Well, I try to give them kind of an outline for how the call should go. Here's the outline. You could even build it in your CRM. So you're literally pulling this up every time and filling in the form with different questions and points that you need to hit on the call, which kind of keeps them focused. So that's one way I've done it. Another is just doing a lot of role playing and training with them. Okay, here's how the call should go. And here's why we're doing it this way instead of the other way. And here's how this builds trust. So you're kind of just educating them on why this makes sense and how this is going to help their conversion rate.
Very cool. So Lauren, how do you typically work with clients? Do you work with them for like a fixed amount of time or how do typically clients engage with you?
Sure. Sometimes I'll work with them on a project basis, just building out one or two or all of the pieces needed to raise capital more efficiently. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I will work as fractional investor relations for them for years on end. So I've been with a lot of my clients for a couple of years now. And so it just depends on their specific scope of work. Everything we do is custom.
Very cool. So fractional investor relations, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it's kind of like an extra set of hands, either sending out marketing communications or social media posts or helping with a deal, getting wires in the door and subscription agreements filled out properly and all the different little tech issues that come up as people are subscribing to your offering. So it's kind of just an extra set of hands. I don't necessarily take a bunch of investor calls or raise the capital for them. But I think of it more even as investor servicing is the back office piece.
That's huge. I can see that being super valuable, especially for smaller capital raisers don't have a huge team. That would be very, very valuable. Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. So a lot of people in the multifamily space over the last few years have taken a real kicking. How have you helped your clients to kind of adjust to this new reality?
Yeah. So, it depends on the client. Everybody's different. Some people have taken a kicking, some haven't. Some have investors who have had kickings in other areas. And so each situation is a little bit different on how to handle it and what, verbiage to say and how transparent to be and all the different pieces. But obviously the biggest one is always be transparent, always be open and willing to have a conversation with the investors, especially if it's one of your deals that has gone wrong. And sometimes it's, hey, you know what? A deal went wrong and our investors, we're not going to ask them for more money for another deal because it's not right. So we're going to go out and find new investors and with them, we're going to be transparent that, hey, yes, we had this loss or whatever happened. So communication and transparency is usually how we navigate those situations. This is just so important. Yeah,
definitely. Very, very cool. So where do you see yourself taking your company over the next year or two, Lauren?
Yeah. Well, I'm loving what we're doing. We're always integrating new kinds of tech and bringing new AI pieces into capital raising, which is fun. So just trying to stay on top of all those trends and help make my clients' capital raising more efficient and less capital intensive on the cost side is the goal there. I also, with a partner, started Equity Raise last year, which we're a call center and we do outbound calls to investors that come in and qualify them and set appointments with our clients. So growing that is going to be a big goal as well, which has been fun. And just working in the business and on the business as much as possible.
Very, very cool. Lauren, this has been great. Thank you very much for sharing some of your expertise. If people want to connect with you, if they want to find out more, where should they go?
Sure. LinkedIn's a great place. Lauren Brychell is just my name there.
All right, good. And you've got a good website as well. I usually say just one thing, but you got a lovely website. So what's that one?
Thank you. It is equity-elevated.com.
Very good. Lauren, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
All right, everybody, take care, and we will see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Property Profits Podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, apply at daveinterviews.com.